We cast off the yoke of royalty in the United States on July 4, 1776. However, being a nation that was, for all intent and purposes, built on commerce, we always kept ties with the United Kingdom because they were the greatest trading empire that existed at the time. If anyone doubts this, just look at the background of the founding fathers, and you may be amazed at how many of them were rich merchants of some sort or other. We did fight a war with them over impressment of our merchant sailors to help man their naval ships during the Napoleonic War. And while they did set fire to Washington, D.C., they couldn't put the resources needed to make a real war of it because of Napoleon's wars of conquest on the continent. The Treaty of Ghent ended the War of 1812, and the U.S. and UK have had a mostly cordial relationship ever since. Some even call it a special relationship, which has been described as if one were about to be hit by a bus, the other would shove them out of the way and risk taking a hit themselves. The relationship has seen both parties through several wars where, even if one side was technically a neutral party, help was extended, sometimes on the sly. So since we don't have royalty in this country and never wanted any, why are we so enamored with the British royal family? Is it because we are, as according to George Bernard Shaw, two countries separated by a common language, or is there something deeper than is readily evident? Some from other countries have said that we, in effect, elect a king every 4 years. And when one considers the pomp and circumstance that surrounds the presidency and the executive powers that the office actually holds, it's easy to see why it would seem that way from afar. While the White House is nearly a palace in its own right, and Camp David is more than just a quaint getaway, none of the many presidents' personal residences rise to the level of opulence to truly be considered a palace as they have in Europe. Not even Mar-a-Lago. The fact that the president changes every 4 or 8 years, barring any unfortunate occurrence, the office doesn't hold the imagination like true royalty does. The president, no matter how high-born, has to portray themselves as a man of the people, and if that means throwing out the first pitch of the season or hosting an annual Easter egg hunt on the South Lawn, that's what they have to do, even if they don't want to. Queen Elizabeth never had to do such things because it would be beneath the crown to engage in such activities. Truly, she seemed to be Most Serene Highness, the emphasis on serene. Even if a couple of her sons failed to at the serene part from time to time, he was always there like a lighthouse in the night, a steady and stalwart force in uncertain times. While it seems she had no real political power, in fact, the crown is a true agent of influence. She had many powers she only used on the very rare occasion Parliament could not act without her explicit approval. One of those rare occasions was the Falkland War. Margaret Thatcher may have gotten the House of Commons to assemble the invasion fleet, but only the Queen could set them a sail, as only the Crown can actually declare war. The President has the ability to call Congress into session, but he can only adjourn Congress if both houses cannot agree on a date for adjournment. She could not only call Parliament into session, but could send them home if she saw fit. She never did this unless advised by her prime minister, of which she had 15. She had powers that a president could only dream of. While she never refused her assent to any law passed by Parliament, in effect a veto, she often met with legislative members of the Privy Council to modify certain legislation that she might have felt either infringed on the royal prerogative or that she felt didn't do best for the UK as currently written. Since the Privy Council is made up of members of both the majority and the opposition, she could act as a sort of mediator, working to bring both sides to meet somewhere in the middle. She only once used her reserve powers to appoint a prime minister of her own choosing, and even then she did it with the advice of the outgoing prime minister. She could have chose any member of the Commons. That is her right, but she always accepted the choice of the House when she could. She could have dissolved Parliament and ordered new elections any time she saw fit and hoped for a Parliament more to her liking, but she never saw fit to take such a drastic step. She only once refused the Queen's consent for debate on a bill, and only then when her senior ministers felt the bill in question was not in the best interest of her subjects. She met with every U.S. president in office during her reign with the exception of Lyndon Johnson. The Queen was patron to over 500 organizations in her lifetime. Her Majesty did not just lend her name to these diverse organizations. Much of her working life was spent supporting her patronages both in the UK and overseas. Possibly we have been in awe of the Queen because of what she could accomplish and how she did it. The private conversation, a discreet comment, or casual remark she could accomplish more than any blustering politician could ever hope to. Her words carried weight simply because she was the queen, and that was enough to get the job done. An example of this was when King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia was at Balmoral Castle back in 2003. When the queen offered him a tour of the estate, he grudgingly accepted, and a Land Rover was brought up. King got in the passenger seat with his interpreter in the back. In 2003, women were not allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia. However, this didn't faze the queen one bit. She hopped in the driver's seat, fired up the car, and took off before the king could say anything. Having been an ambulance driver and mechanic with the Auxiliary Territorial Service during World War II, she had learned how to drive quite quickly and carefully. As she was tearing around the Balmoral grounds, keeping up a steady chatter about various and sundry sights about the estate the whole time. The king was at the point of being apoplectic when he asked through his interpreter that she slow down and keep her eyes on the road. She did neither. She made an unequivocal statement about the kingdom's attitudes toward women without saying a single word about it. She was a lover of animals. Her pack of corgis attest to that, but her real passion with animals were her thoroughbreds. First thing put on her calendar every year was the Royal Ascot Derby, which she never missed. Many years she attended the Epsom Derby and even made it to the Kentucky Derby 5 times. She loved to watch the ponies run, as do many Americans. Alas, none of her children or grandchildren have the same love of the sport of kings as she did, and the world may be worse for it. She was elegant, kind, concerned about her subjects as well as the world at large. There have been many heads of state around the world that could have learned a lot from her. King Charles, with his floppy ears and fat fingers, has a huge set of boots to fill, and only time will tell if he's up to the task. Well, that's it for this week. Feel free to like and subscribe and leave a comment. If you'd like to support the channel, visit our Patreon so that we can keep bringing you more videos. So long, stay safe, and thanks for watching.